Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dedicated Show. Really excited to announce our guest today. We're going to talk to Andrew Kim. He is an Alteryx ace and head of enablement at Data Meaning. Today, we're going to talk about how the analytics process can be automated from start to finish. It's all about APA, analytics process automation. We've got a lot of things to cover, but we are definitely taking questions from the live audience. So I highly encourage you, as you're joining the session, either ask any questions that you've got on analytics process automation, on any of the tools that are available. We're going to go ahead and bring Andrew up in just a second. As you're joining, I also want you to let us know where you're tuning in from, because I do think it's interesting as people join the session to know where they're joining from. Is it your morning? Is it your lunchtime? Is it your bedtime? Or what are you actually doing right now? So I'm going to go ahead and bring Andrew up on our virtual stage here. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing?
Hi. So we've got some people who are joining here already. Hi, Janine. Great to have you here. So Andrew, where are you joining us from?
Orlando, Florida. So it's lunchtime here, getting a little excited. It's finally starting to heat up, as crazy as that sounds. So for us, heat is definitely upper 90s. So keeping it nice and toasty. Oh, and I
Yeah.
see Paul from Albuquerque as well. That's actually where I have a lot of family from. So
Okay.
really exciting to see Paul.
Yeah, see, we've got Deepak here from Bangalore, dinner time, we've got bedtime, we've got lunchtime. So people are joining in definitely at all these different times in different time zones. So grab your coffee or your evening drink, whatever you want to grab, and let's get into the session. So Andrew, for those who might not be familiar with you, it'd be great if you can provide a quick intro.
So my name's Andrew Kim. I'm from Data Meaning, which is a consultancy firm. We do a lot of work in the enablement space. So what does that really mean? It means I actually love teaching so much that I actually get paid to do it. So when we talk about this, it's across a variety of platforms, primarily in self-service analytics. So you got Alteryx, my favorite, of course, Tableau, you've got Salesforce, and a slew of other platforms that exist within the industry that are utilized to help drive analytics and insights.
Great. So Data Meeting, that's how did that name come to be? Do you know the story behind Data Meaning? Because I really like that name.
Yeah, so I mean, when we're looking at data as a whole, it's really focused around what drives value, and then how do you get your data to mean more, right?
Mhm.
So when you're searching for something deeper, which was definitely the case, this is my first consultancy role. It was really about driving that quantitative value for the entire organization and helping leaders and individuals get from raw data to analytics, and then most importantly to insights. And then the best part of this is action, right? It means nothing to find all these cool things out without actually acting upon them.
Yes, absolutely. And are there specific industries or regions that Data Meeting is focused on serving, or is it kind of like across the board?
So we have a handful that we specialize in, and then we also specialize in quite a few departments. So when we talk about industries, um, hospitality is a huge one.
Mhm.
We also have healthcare, manufacturing, um, health, and then another big one for us is around CPG. So that's like consumer packaged goods.
Right.
And then we have a handful of other industries that we work really well with, but those are definitely our staples.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So, Andrew, when I was doing research, right, about, when you were joining the show and I was preparing the questions, one thing I came across was that you are an ace. So
Yes.
I was like, what is this ace? And I figured instead of researching this myself, I would just ask Andrew on the show in case other people want to know what an ace is.
Awesome. So an ace is like an alter ego. No, I'm kidding. It's funny that we're talking about this today of all days because today is actually Ace Dev Days. So with Alteryx, Alteryx is a platform, and it's Alteryx specialist or expert is what that title designates. When we talk about it, what we do is think of us as being super users and experts within the community in the environment. So we've shown technical prowess, we've shown that we're willing to help others learn for free, and that we also understand what the full platform has to offer. And when we're talking about this, when I said alter ego, it's a little funny because there's actually, when I said Ace Dev Days, you can see my Dev Days shirt here, which has Alteryx plastered all over it. So even though I'm looking nice and professional here today, those roots run pretty deep. So when we kind of talk about these different aspects, that means Alteryx is there for that whole middle section.
Mhm.
And it, we can see that it fills a large role within organizations.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm wearing my dedicated shirt underneath as well, just to
Nice.
superhero thing. I get it. I get it. So awesome. So how many aces are there in the world?
Yeah, so there's only a handful of aces actually. So in the entire world, I think right now we're at like 35. And
Wow.
believe it or not, Alteryx has three of, or sorry, not Alteryx, Data Meaning has three of those. So we've got quite a few aces here, and Data Meaning is a global company.
Mhm.
So we do actually have a number of our team members in Brazil as well as India. And like I mentioned, I'm here in the US.
Right.
So it's exciting because when we're talking about working with self-service as a whole in analytics process automation, that can mean collaborating with the entire globe.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. Congratulations on being an ace. That's really cool, and congratulations
Thank
to
you.
Data Meeting for having 3 of the 35. That's a pretty significant percentage. So that's great. I think as we get into this topic, I think it would be great for us to define what really is analytics process automation and kind of what does that all entail.
Mm. That's a great question. So when we talk about what analytics process automation is, it's really focused on analyzing, uh, automating from those beginning data sets that you have and those sources, right? And then bringing those disparate pieces together to get all the way to the action
Hmm.
portion, right? So when we talk about doing that, that entire process, as we're looking at identifying it, is really focused on being able to not only connect those, so we're looking from a systematic perspective at literally just being able to turn on the light switch and everything runs from start to finish,
Yeah.
but more importantly, that we have transparency throughout the entire process.
Hmm.
So when we look at those components, of course, we could do this inside of a black box and say, ta-da, here's your insights, and you're going to make $1 million this year, Kate.
Yes,
Um,
I didn't know
that
that was
would
my
be
goal, Andrew. That's awesome.
wonderful. See, then that's amazing, right? But if somebody told you you're going to make $1 million, you'd be like, that's wonderful, Andrew, but I have no idea how I'm going to do that. And so, as we're kind of talking about those pieces, the goal is really to outline that. And something that I like to share with everyone, and one of my passions is actually around looping that communication back. So, as we talk about the process as a whole, what's important is that we are not only looking at those individuals who are responsible for creating the action as our end clients, but
Hmm.
also the ones that are providing us with that data, right? Because we have all heard of garbage in, garbage out. And as we kind of talk about the data moving faster throughout the entire world, and especially the data ecosystems that we're building,
Right.
um, we're functioning in two different capacities here. One is just the sheer volume and speed, and then the other one is also functioning in this gray area that exists. So as we talk about streaming analytics, maybe you're using Kafka, Apache NiFi, or maybe Fivetran, right? Any of
Right.
those platforms are great, But when we discuss streaming, how many of us are doing streaming validation, right? So when we talk about building these things out, we also need to be able to convey from an action perspective, hey, we're operating in a gray area. And
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. So just remember when you make this decision, it's not as black and white as it could be. But still, we have to make a decision. We have to be actionable, right? So
Right.
that's where we look at from an analytics process automation perspective. It's not just about um, going from 0 to 100 in 3 seconds flat, right? We still got to
Right.
maintain control of what we're driving. And if you made $1 million this year, Kate, that's great, but we want to make sure you get to enjoy it too, right? So,
Yes, I'll let you know when I get there. So let's take a question from the audience here. So Deepak has a question, and he's asking something that I think is on the minds of several data analysts, data scientists. Are data analysts going to be eventually replaced by robots? If not, what should we do to best adapt to APA?
ooh, this is a great question. So I love the robot question, especially as all of us are starting to get to work from home, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh man, this is going to be one of my favorite books is Player Piano, and you see all these dystopian novels, like everybody has to go home, right? I,
Mhm.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I mean, when we talk about the sheer volume of data that's coming on board, they were literally just talking. I was listening to the news the other morning, and they were talking about how many uh, videos and photos are uploaded to Google Drive space every day. And it was 500 million videos every day are being uploaded. So when we talk about being able to analyze these things, the approach from an analysis perspective isn't that it's a straight line. It's
Yeah.
iterative, it's cyclical. So that means that we're actually generating more work, not for ourselves as individuals, right? But collectively, we're generating more work for us to do. And I think we are going to have to get smarter about how we accomplish that work and also selecting what creates value. That way, we're not just doing busy work.
Mhm.
But the best way we can really adapt is by getting involved in the communities.
Yeah.
You can check out the Alteryx community. It's extremely robust. Everything on there is free. You have the Tableau community as well. User groups are important, and that also has a human aspect in terms of networking. And then, of course, you can check out Data Meaning. We've got an incredible YouTube series called Data in the Wild.
Okay.
We're posting videos a couple times a week now. These are incredible, 3 to 5 minutes. And then our goal is actually to be to a video every weekday, which will give you
Mhm.
some handy tips and tricks. And then that's going to be at the start of 2022. And you're going
Mhm.
to see us build up to that. So you're going to see videos coming out every week. And this is in addition to LinkedIn Live and webinars that we'll be doing. So if you're looking to learn, there's plenty of free content that's available out there. And then a lot of these software platforms like Alteryx give free licenses to students, or if you're out of work,
Yeah.
they'll actually give you free licenses. And then the incredible thing is also you'll see that the certifications are either free or cheap. And when I
Mhm.
say cheap, it's like $100 or less. So it's
Right.
incredible for you to be able to capture value in a new job and retrain yourself, all with resources that are available out there.
Yeah, that's great, and I agree that there's so much in the community. I know right before we started the call, you mentioned that you do some work with Salesforce and Tableau user group. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do there, and maybe how other people can get involved?
Yes, it involves not sleeping for like
Who needs that?
4 days a week, right? Yeah, no, I'm kidding. It's actually great. I love doing the user groups. I've done them for a number of years. I'm involved with the Orlando Alteryx user group, the Tableau user group. We literally just had a session last week on Thursday. We're running those once a month.
Mhm.
We've got Tableau Zen Masters, other people joining us for those. And what's great is like people are literally bringing their dashboards to those events and saying, hey, I'm working on this dashboard right now. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of like a Pecha Kucha, which is essentially a very short presentation, like
Hmm.
5 to 10 minutes. And
Okay.
essentially I present like an idea or something that I'm working on, and then I share it with everybody, and then it's okay, what do you guys think? Or I'm stuck here, can you help me? Right?
Hmm.
And then you can get feedback in that manner. And we're literally doing that with 100 people on the call, believe it or not. 100 people, and they're giving feedback. And imagine the power of that. Like, just think about that for a second. You have a dashboard, and I mean, you have people with 10, 15 years of experience with visualization, and then even some that are brand new, and you're asking them, hey, how can I make this dashboard work for my company? How can I get people more engaged? Right?
Yeah.
And we're all here to help. And then you'll literally have people offering free time. Just, hey, I want to help you. That sounds like a cool project. So,
Wow, that actually sounds really cool. I wish I had something like that when I was especially starting out with data visualization. It's always so helpful to get someone who knows what they're doing to take a
oh
look
yeah.
at your dashboard. I remember I found one internally at the company I was working for. That poor guy. I'd always be like, "Hey, can you? I want to just do this quick thing. Can you just help me?" And he's like, "Yeah." In the beginning, he was like, "Yeah, sure." And then he's like, "You can just Google this. Like, stop." Eventually, it's addictive because then you could just jump in anytime and just kind of ask them questions. But that's great that there's an actual forum and a place to do that. It's probably better than trying to annoy all your colleagues with the same questions every time.
Oh yeah. And as we kind of talk about this, um, when we talk about like volume and velocity of implementation of APA, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of different areas that we kind of see that exist with the volume of data. I recommend for people who are utilizing, when I say high volumes, I'm talking like billions of records,
Mhm.
and then high gigabytes. Or even terabytes of data on a daily basis. Snowflake, we're using some other type of MPP platform, which is centered around massive parallel processing. A
Mhm.
lot of that's going to be in the cloud. So when we talk about utilizing those resources, you'll see some differentiation with what's kind of in the middle. So you can see some ETL tools and platforms, and then also ELT. So the
Mm.
difference between those two is what happens when. So when we talk about this, it's really extract is the E,
Mhm.
transform is the T, and then load is the final one. So when we talk about having a high volume of data, we may want to extract and load it first, and then that's essentially like, how do you want to make your sandwich, right? Do you want to make it all in the same spot and kind of pile it together and like swap some things out? Or do you want to have it spread out on the table and be able to see things individually and kind of work with it from there?
It's all about making a sandwich. I get it, Andrew. I remember I posted, it was probably a year or two ago, I posted a question on LinkedIn of ETL versus ELT. And yeah, things got heated. People feel very strongly about one side versus another. And it's definitely split. It's kind of like the R versus Python or Tableau versus Power BI kind of conversation where you have very strong opinions on both sides. I was just curious what was best, but it was a fun post for sure.
Yeah, and I think it really is use case contingent. So as we
Yeah.
kind of talk about this, right, understanding those differentials, like one of the recommendations that I have is joining the user groups again. So Asmita, if you want to join the user groups and kind of take a look at where you can get involved in those, if you go to any of the community portals, you can see those. So community.alteryx.com, I think it's the
Mhm.
same for Tableau, Talend and Snowflake or other ones, right? So as we kind of talk about those different platforms, what you can do when you go to those, some of them are obviously starting physical user groups back up. Yes. And then others are meeting virtually. And then you even have some industry ones. So as we kind of talk about those, it's literally just like signing up for a webinar. You'll get involved from there. And if you want to get involved in leadership, I can tell you we have an email that we post at the end of every session on a slide, and we say, hey, if you're interested in speaking or would like to become part of leadership, please reach out to us. And it's about getting involved. And I think that's the exciting part. It's just like getting involved in your open community. And there's even projects like that. So if you want to do some volunteerism stuff,
Yeah.
there's plenty available out there.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll ask one more question on this topic. From Janine. I think you called this she's asking what was this called again? Was it a pecha kucha? Did I say that right? The quick
Yes. Yeah. So that if you just do a quick Google search, it'll be like a 5 to 15 minute presentation.
yeah.
And this is actually exciting. We started doing this at a conference that is like very near and dear to my heart. It was the first time that I saw it, called the Tapestry Conference.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, it's no longer around. But what we did during that conference is um, we went through a very interesting exercise, and with a group of individuals that we would never think of in terms of like the first data analysts is what I like to call them. And that's actually the Tapestry conference was actually hosted by Tableau, and
Mm-hmm.
their focus was we want to connect journalists. So journalists were the first analysts because you want to trust someone's story, right?
Yeah.
You want to say, wow, I'm going to go here and learn about this. And you're like, okay, well, where did they learn that from? Where's their
Mm-hmm.
source? Where's their data from, right?
Yeah.
And now when we look at analytics as a whole in this entire process automation, that's the big question, right? Is how do we get to the single point of truth? And can I trust what you're telling me? Because it could affect um, whether our entire company is run by robots, right? Or whether we're kind of going and taking things to the next level and really succeeding. And I look at those as being opportunities. And really, it's just opportunities to in working clothes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
anytime we see those, I think we should really take advantage of being able to um, drive success and value.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we do have more questions that are coming in, but okay, so people are really wanting me to take Matthew's question. Where's Matthew's question? Here we go. A couple of people upvoted it through the comments. Um,
Nice.
so it's not really APA related, but let's just take this one. How does somebody who's mid-career, right, get into data when they're competing with others who might be
Mm.
more familiar, with the more recent tools?
So Matthew, I think, have I got the tools for you? Um, I think that's part of the reason why I love Alteryx so much, is because Matthew, you probably have something that those young guys don't have, and that's an understanding of the business, right? So when we talk about having an understanding of the business and what's the entire process, right? What are the people doing? What's the product that we're trying to sell? And then what does that process look like from an operational perspective? All of those things come with experience, which I find that people who are mid-career tend to have more of. Now,
Mhm.
there is obviously the technical aspect that may be missing, but really the key around that is providing you with a means of things that you may be familiar with. So an example would be, I may be familiar with Excel, and you'll see in a lot of these different communities, they'll give you those 3 to 5 minute videos where, hey, I know how to do a VLOOKUP. How do I do that in Alteryx?
Right.
I know how to do a bar graph. How do I do that in Tableau, right? And as we kind of see some of these things grow and evolve, you can work on those skills, and then you'll have an understanding of those KPIs or those key performance indicators. What should I be displaying, or what insights should I be driving that are going to be actionable for everybody? And
Yeah.
that's where I see people at the start of their career. Um, I would recommend subscribing like to some industry leaders. Um, Data Meaning is a good consultancy practice. We're not large enough because we're more boutique, where we don't have a research and development arm. But when you look at companies like maybe McKinsey, I follow them, Harvard Business Review, those, they're doing heavy research, right? They've got an entire army of people focused on that. You, in your early part of your career, can follow some of those sources and then identify what are those KPIs that I should be tracking. And then I think from the mid-career perspective, you actually can learn much faster because it's just applying those technical skills, and then maybe even working from a mid-career perspective, having those help around you that have that technical expertise, and now you can foster some collaboration, which is where these self-service platforms really come in.
Yes, I definitely agree, especially on the point with the self-service platforms. A lot of times I witness individuals who are, really familiar with, let's say, Excel, and they're like, yeah, I go to Excel for all of my data needs. And then you show them kind of how easy it is to build something in, let's say, Tableau that, is just a few clicks versus in Excel, you have to sometimes massage it a little bit more and put it into a
Yeah.
specific pivot table and all these things. And I think it's just, I don't know if I want to call it fear or an intimidation factor where you've just not used it before. But I
Yes.
think just kind of letting yourself try it. There is a free version available after all that you can download and try today if you wanted to. I think just going in there and trying it, you'll see that it's a lot of times a lot easier to use these newer tools than you would think. So yeah, I think all those tools make it easier. So to answer Matthew's question, there's hope. Just you just have to want it, and I think your point on collaboration definitely is important because you might not want to become that data analytics expert, but if you've got the industry and domain knowledge, you can partner with those people that you might want to work with in delivering those specific insights and solutions.
Yeah, and when we talk about collaborating, right? Don't just think about your coworkers. It's summer break right now, and believe it or not, a lot of kids, like could be your children, um, are actually really good at working with some of these platforms and driving insights. And when we say that, you could make it like a game. So you'll see Makeover Mondays out there. Um, Eva Murray, I love Eva Murray. She's an incredible person. She's over at Snowflake now, and she's literally doing a series where every week she's actually taking a data source from the Snowflake marketplace and showing what insights she's able to derive. An example of this is my wife is actually pregnant and we'll be having a baby here in a few weeks, and which is very exciting. But something that she went through is she actually pulled in a data source that highlighted what does the parental leave look like for each country, and then what's mandated. And what's interesting is the US was the only developed country that does not mandate parental leave. So interesting topics, right? There's things that derive around your everyday life, even if you're looking at moving because you're working remote.
Yeah.
There's lots of cool people that are out there finding houses, doing all types of research. And we got this year is the census year, so you got the US Census coming out. There's all kinds of data there. Actually, next month for the Tableau user group for Orlando, we actually have the US Census, a couple guys from there coming and presenting.
Oh,
So
wow.
don't think that the data has to be just boring work stuff, right? We can integrate a lot of these different sources and even do some fun things. And there's even some aspects like that on the community. Data science explained by Alteryx by clustering algorithms. How do you sort your clothes, right? And when we talk about seeing this over the next 3 years,
Yeah.
Ravit had asked a question about where do we see the industry going? And I see these skills that we see as very desirable from different companies coming down in terms of uh, level of requirements, and then even being able to um, do this from a systematic perspective where we see the assisted machine learning and all of these brute
Mhm.
force methods of application.
Yeah.
We could see those coming down where we could say, hey, I will just want to do something quick and dirty. I have an analytics process that I've already started, and it is automated, but how do I take that to the next level?
Right.
And that's the exciting part, right? I freed up my time
Yeah.
and now I want to try something new. And you can do that with something that you already built. You can do it quickly. So in the 10 minutes I may have spent working on the report every week, now I can
Mhm.
try new things. And then, hey, I think I've got this cool idea. Maybe I've got a data scientist on my team. I think there's enough value here so that evaluation perspective becomes important. And then what we do is we say, now that I've evaluated it, let's drive more money to the company and increase that ROI, so
Yeah.
I can have unlimited vacation, right? I don't
Mhm.
have to worry about that because all of our stuff is automated and we're able to do more. And when I come back, I just need to do some of that slow thinking or deep thinking.
Right. And I think you touched on this slightly with your conversation of the skills kind of coming down across some companies. So I want to address this question here.
Mm.
So basically, a person who's great with Excel, SQL, Alteryx, and Tableau, he works with companies like Apple and Amazon with those skill sets, or should he learn Python if he wants to, get a job at those companies?
This is a great question. So when we talk about those different aspects, right, um, there's still that type of work even in those companies. We do consulting for them, we do training with them here at Data Meaning.
Mhm.
Um, and when we talk about those skills, you may still want to learn some Python, right? When we look at platforms like Alteryx, it is code free and code friendly. So there's like a little cultish type group within the Ultrix community. And no, that's not the Aces. We are a little cultish, but the exciting part about it is not only are there the weekly challenges that you'll see, which have different things like Santalytics, where literally you're helping Santa deliver presents. There's all kinds of stuff there on the community, but you also have another level where we say, okay, you solve this using Alteryx, right?
Yeah.
Then there's, from an efficiency perspective, how can you solve these? And
Mhm.
then you can even take it one step further and solve the same challenge with Python, which is literally called snaking through the weekly challenges. So when we talk about these different levels, you can literally work with problems that you're familiar with. You can see other solutions. And it's just incredible that you've got all these resources that you can use. And my recommendation is really just to take advantage of them, even if it's for a few minutes every day.
You're making all of this sound like so much fun, like snaking through the challenge and all when you're really just coding with Python, right? But you seem so excited about this whole I love it.
It's if you got a little bit of a competitive aspect, it keeps you going.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about learning those skills, right, it doesn't all have to be hello world. There's certain topics that attract us. So I'll hint a little bit at my personal life here. I actually live on 3/4 of an acre, and I used to own, of all things, a landscaping business. So I actually
Oh, wow.
love plants.
Huh.
So whenever I play with different data types, plants are actually something that's huge that you can get a variety of data about. My wife was just asking me, she's like, oh my gosh, they got this new little Roomba thing that runs around and it will pull out weeds out of the yard for you.
Hmm.
And she's like, I don't even understand how they do that. So then I started, of course, getting all geeky and nerdy on analytics, and telling her like, oh yeah, they can detect plant shape. There's different um, levels of heat, and they're doing this on farms and stuff now. And that's
Oh,
the
wow.
exciting part, right? Is there's all these different data sources that you can pull in. Don't feel like you have to limit yourself to something that's around work.
So did you get it? Did you get the little thing that's gonna pull out your weeds or no?
I think they still got some more analytics to kind of prove
Okay.
some of this out.
You're afraid it's gonna pull out your flowers or something?
Yeah, so we're a little snooty, and I think when we talk about what
Mhm.
a weed is really a plant that you don't want in your specific area, right?
Yeah.
So we actually plant Florida natives, and we're working on getting a bee box and bats, as crazy as that sounds.
That's like
Uh,
actual
yeah, like the
okay.
little
Yeah, okay.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they help with insect control. I eat a lot of dragon fruit, and they're actually pollinators in the evening.
Okay.
And then obviously the bees, we're working on growing food and stuff, and we want our environment to be healthy. So we're kind of
Yeah.
supporting those different aspects. And they actually have, when you talk about like neural networks, different types of data,
Yeah.
like bats obviously communicate through echolocation, right?
Mhm.
That's a whole nother level of data that we haven't even tapped into yet. And as we kind of talk about these different things, I think that's what I'm really excited to see come over like the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I love this topic, and I know we're not, slowly moving away from APA, but I just want to make one more point. So we've got this robot now that can pull weeds, and you're like, yeah, I don't know if I trust it. But what I keep hearing about, let's say in the medical field, is soon we'll have robots operating on us, right? Let's say removing a tumor, and we want to make sure it doesn't remove, a specific significant body part instead of the tumor. And I think it's something we're going to have to get over in the future, is that like getting over that
Oh
fear of
yeah.
trusting robots. And I guess that will come with time and a proven track record of, you've only taken the weeds. Okay, now I trust you. So,
Exactly. And that's
yeah.
something that we're willing to trust a robot with, right? They were talking about, I remember a Harvard business case that it's one of my favorite ones that they were discussing. And they said, hey, if you were to create a business around teleporting, how would you use it and deploy that to market to start?
My God, there's so
And
many ideas that you can use this for.
there's so many ideas, but as a person, you'd be like, I don't know, like maybe I've watched a little bit of Star Trek and I know how that first turned out, right? And like he was missing an ear or other
Yeah.
pieces, right? So the first thing that we may want to start with, which was actually the business model that they led with, was okay, let's start by transporting actual goods. So we had this
Okay.
whole Suez Canal incident, right?
Right.
Now we want to transport goods. So when we talk about this is just like the analytics process flow, right? Because we're looking for outliers. So we want to say, oh, are there any outliers? Is there anything kind of going on throughout this process that we need to identify and be aware of?
Hmm.
So when we talk about what are some of like the challenges that you may experience during process automation
Which
or
is
even
exactly Reza's
teleportation?
question here. I wanted to just bring that up right as you said that.
So, Reza, I think when we talk about what are some of the challenges that you experience, it's really that trust factor, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think
Mhm.
those feedback loops are important. And then when it's automated, I share this with everybody that I talk to. One, I always ask during the presentations when we're teaching people who here wants a promotion, and then I expect them to raise their hand, right? So like who in the chat wants a promotion?
Guys, if you want a promotion, Andrew's giving out promotions. Just say
Yeah.
aye. Yeah. So,
So as we talk about like those promotions, right? One of the keys is around making sure that people can trust your analytics. And I don't have any this morning, but let's say I had, you'd like to come in on a Tuesday after a 3-day week and get your cup of coffee to get back into the rhythm, right? And the last thing you want, especially when working in a global environment, is maybe somebody's been looking at your report and just the report portion was automated. You went from A to Z instantly and didn't do anything really in between besides the automation. And then you come in the morning and someone's had your report for like 4 hours. They've been staring at it. They've been working at the company for a while and they're dialed in to specifically, hey, here's the things that are wrong with this report. And what we don't want is we're half awake, we haven't enjoyed all of our coffee, and they're like, hey, I see these 5 regions are off. What's going on?
mhm,
Especially this last year during COVID. And what we can highlight is some of that data gray area that exists. And when we identify that particular area, our job isn't to say, hey, I'm going to clean this up. It's really to communicate it and in both directions.
mhm,
So, one is who is that original owner of the data set? That could be
mhm.
IT, that could be some other process, right? And you may want to feed that information back to that individual and say, hey, I'm noticing some data inconsistencies here. And then from that perspective, we also want to identify the people who are using these insights to create action. And we
Mhm.
want to say, hey, we have identified that there are some outliers here. And if all of that communication goes out, you get to enjoy the rest of your coffee in the morning.
Yeah. Well, as long as you can enjoy it while it's still hot, right? That's the.
Exactly, exactly.
Also, we've got some responses on who wants a promotion. So Robert wants one. Akil says who doesn't. Matthew wants a job first, then a promotion. Paul agrees as well, and we got some others. I guess everyone wants that promotion. Now, we've covered some of the challenges, right? It sounds like trust is one of the main obstacles in terms of automating this analytics process. What does data meaning do to kind of help either build that trust
Mm.
or overcome this obstacle?
Yes. So I think this is the most important part, and I always get a little teary-eyed and emotional during this part because from a consultancy perspective, a lot of people have questions around, oh, a consultancy, that means you're going to come in with these great ideas and build something amazing and flashy, right? And it's going to be so cool, you're going to have to stay here and help me maintain it because I have no
Forever.
idea what's going on.
Yes.
um, and that was actually one of the first questions that I posed to one of our managing partners as I said, hey, what type of firm is Data Meaning?
Hmm.
Because what we're working with today is a lot of self-service analytics.
Hmm.
And self-service should mean that I, as a user, should be able to understand
Yeah.
and maintain whatever processes are going on going forward.
Yeah.
Now, what data meaning does is we actually pair in regards to our services. We've got a nice breadth in terms of service offerings. And we do things like creative services, obviously business intelligence, change management, that's portion of this, right? And then the other portion that I'm heavily involved in is the education and training. So when we
Hmm.
talk about this, there may be a solution that you're looking at where you say, hey, this currently isn't in my wheelhouse. Maybe you're trying to understand how to get on an MPP platform like Snowflake,
Right.
and you want to establish that as an opportunity for your company. Um, we can help you go through that change and implementation and get to the cloud. And
Hmm.
then when we talk about creating insights from there, there may be an expediency that you're looking for, or it may just be we need new visualizations because this is information related to IoT sensors where we have people in the operating room where the robot is operating, right? Or even people are operating remotely because we may want to have individuals in different time zones. I don't want my doctor operating on me at midnight and he's had very little sleep. I would like a doctor from India to do that for me. And he's wide awake. It's the middle of the day.
Right.
Um, and so as we kind of talk about these aspects, what we do is we take you from I just don't have the bandwidth to okay, now it's automated and set up for processing, to okay, now let's also train and enable you so that way you can manage this going forward.
Yeah.
And that's really the key. And we also do that with something that we call hypercare. So
Okay.
hypercare is how we go about doing providing an opportunity for you to ask questions. And then also, if you're going through and iterating with great ideas, how can you apply those to the solution that's been created? And you
Hmm.
have essentially end up with a bucket of hours to do that, and then call on those people that have helped you with the process.
Wow, hypercare sounds really awesome. That's so talking about education and training, that was actually one of my favorite things to do when I was implementing Tableau, let's say at an organization.
Hmm.
Building those dashboards, that's so much fun, and getting this new data set is so much fun. But then showing the individuals that have to kind of manage this process going forward how easy it is to literally
Mm.
either click a refresh button or connect it to an updated data source depending on the situation is so rewarding because you see kind of the smile on their face that they're like, oh, I can do this. This is not this big shiny object that I can't seem to maintain. So yeah, it's very, very rewarding. It's great that you get to do this.
Yeah, and I'm always excited for technical questions. So even if you guys have some technical questions now,
Yeah,
I'm more than happy to answer those. I've been doing architecture for a number of years in every industry. So like from healthcare, where it's obviously highly secure.
yeah,
I've worked with like health and human services. I've done travel and tourism, and then even e-commerce. So if you've got any MWS questions. This will kind of be like a little bit of lingo for those of you doing e-commerce. That's merchant web services. So if you're selling like on Amazon or doing some of those things, I also have some experience with that as well.
awesome. What about more bees? George liked
More
your story
bees.
about the bees. Yes. Um,
Yeah. So That has definitely been a passion project, and like trying to understand what it is that bees need.
Yeah.
And then also when we talk about our entire agriculture industry, right? It's highly reliant on bees. Literally, they're moving bees across the country. So like I have some bees and they're like, hey, we need them in California to
Yeah.
help with your almond milk, right?
Wow.
So there's all those memes and stuff that you see out there, like how many different things can you milk? Like
Yeah.
there's like 20 different things, right? All of those require pollinators.
Right.
So when we look at those different aspects, it's a fascination with how they're communicating, like
Mhm.
neural networks, right? The decision trees. So I was watching this guy who I'm not sure if he had a good decision tree going on there. There was a swarm, and literally if you look up a swarm of bees, they'll that's whenever there's essentially two queen bees together and then they start to separate. So that's when
Mhm.
you see like Winnie the Pooh style, they're kind of swarming around, right? And then they end up landing somewhere and people want to do something with them, right?
Right.
So you'll see these guys come in, and this example, the guy was standing on top of his truck, and there was probably a good 5,000 bees on the tree. And he goes over there and he has the box on the top of his truck and he says, okay, so now I'm going to look for the queen.
Right.
And he goes over there and he just reaches into the swarm and he actually picks out the queen bee in his hand. It was incredible. And
Oh
he
my
puts it in
God.
there, right? In this like little container. And then he puts that right in the front of the box. So that box that we're familiar with seeing the beehive. And then
Right.
this was the most incredible part. He goes over there and he says, okay, now I want all the bees to go into the hive. And so he shakes the branch and all the bees fall off. And instantly, I mean, like my heart is probably through the moon at that point. And happens is they all fall down and then you see them and they start like shaking their little butts.
Okay.
And then they all start marching their way into the hive. And they
Wow.
just did it on their own. And
That's
what's incredible when we talk about analytics process automation, Kate, is like I see the same thing happening with the flow of data.
they shake their butts and then they they automate.
Exactly. We got to remember to do that when we're sitting in the chair all day, right? Um,
Yes.
you gotta make sure your Apple Watch tells you to move a little bit, right? At least do a little butt shake every once in a while.
That's awesome. Yes, exactly. And George, so George had a follow-up question here. He's asking, what's the most interesting data set that you've personally worked with?
Oh
Talking
man,
about
this is
unique.
a tough one. Um, I'll give you the top three. One was sailing data for
Okay.
the boats for the U.S. Olympic sailing team. That was
Mhm.
pretty cool. So I didn't realize how fast they were going. They're going like 80 miles an hour on the water.
Wow.
And they're like, we want in real time to track these boats in the ocean and to be able to understand when they do a tight turn. And then we want that in real time so we can do like the little ghost racing thing that you see on some of your video games, right?
Right.
We want to be able to see that. So that one was pretty cool.
Wow.
Um, Another one um, is security breaches.
Mm.
So I've done some work with cybersecurity stuff around breach data. And it's interesting. I used to play a lot of strategy games when I was younger. So doing like that defensive what we're seeing with the meat packing plant that just got um, hacked, right? So we work with manufacturing companies, and as we kind of talk about this type of data in particular, it's
Hmm.
IoT data, and then how do you make sure that one, you're detecting things like irregularities,
Right.
and then two, that you're keeping all that metadata up to date. Um, yeah, those are a couple of them, and I think the final one would actually be some B data. B data is pretty cool. So
It's got to be
uh,
B data. Yes, of course.
exactly.
Yeah, the
Exactly.
sailing one, that's impressive. 80 miles an hour. I mean, we rarely even drive that fast, and that's pretty fast. So,
Yeah, I mean, we were watching a movie the other day, and uh, the woman was like, she knocked the guy off the boat during one of those sessions. Obviously, it was
What did
like
he
one of
do?
the
What did he do to
suspense
her?
movies, yeah. And when she knocked him off, he like fell in the water and he was just laying there face down. And my wife, she was like, "What happened to him?" She's like, "How did he just? He's not even moving." I'm like, "He fell out at like 80 miles an hour. That's like falling
Yeah.
out of a car on the rough concrete." So
Oh my
uh,
God.
yeah, there's all those data points that we kind of see, and when we think of those data points, they apply like to different industries, right? They apply to different scenarios, and
You're
I think
you're
that's
reading my questions. I got you now. Because I'm like he'll have a question on industries, and then I knew you're gonna do that. I could tell.
exactly. I love these questions, guys. So when we talk about different industries in which apply higher yield in terms of ROI,
Yeah.
I think a majority of it that I'm seeing right now is really along um, things that are faster moving. So an
Mhm.
example of this um, that I kind of highlight is kind of picking up pennies, right?
Right.
Walmart is famous for doing this. So when we talk about streamlining automation, they were one of the first companies to introduce RFID tags on every single product.
Mm,
And the reason why they did this is like everybody was like, oh my gosh, you just added 10 cents to every product just so you could track it. And
right.
it's like, why are we doing that? And the reason being is, hey, if I tracked it and you go to scan something, right? Um, I don't know how old everybody is on the line. This will kind of date me a little bit. But I remember when you used to go into stores and like half the store would be shut down because they'd be like, don't do anything. We're doing an inventory count right now, right? And when we talk about seeing some of those things, you don't see them anymore, right?
Right.
And part of that is because we're going from a batch process to streaming analytics. And
Hmm.
then that means that literally I've identified, okay, 3 products exited. That means we need to order some more, right? And
Yeah.
especially when we're doing omni-channel, which a lot of different companies are doing this. We even do this, just so you're aware, with our time, right?
Mm,
As consultants, there are different avenues in which we can sell our services. One example would be, okay, we work with technology partners and they can help sell our time. Another one is we can sell it directly to you, right? And
right.
then the final one is obviously we could subcontract out. So you've
Hmm.
got all those different tiers that exist, and we're seeing this across um, industries. And when we try and pinpoint those different applications, that's where we see those faster moving pieces kind of occurring and creating more value. Because, hey, if I got increased my rate, let's say $5 an hour, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's heard if you had the multiplier. Oh, this is a finance thing. Sorry. If you had a multiplier, how quickly, if you uh, multiplied a penny over and over again, right? How quickly would you get to $1 million? And it's actually pretty fast. And the
Yeah.
same is true with all of these things that we're looking at. So another industry that I'll name that is really kind of doing this is healthcare. So
Hmm.
healthcare, we see huge gains. And in part, this is because they're required here in the US to track now qualitative aspects of their services. And
Hmm.
then they're also being driven based off of the value that they provide to their customers. And they end up losing money if they're not providing that value. So your length of
Yeah.
stay or how long you stay in the hospital, instead of, oh, well, you stayed longer, we're going to charge you more.
Hmm.
Now it's okay. Average patient is supposed to stay here 5 days. They stayed 2 weeks.
Hmm.
Guys, what are you doing over there? We're not going to pay you for that. That's your
Right.
responsibility now. So,
Yeah. I also don't want to be the person who's staying there 2 weeks when you could have gone home 5 days after 5 days. So I can definitely see this being applied to, I guess, almost every industry. My follow-up question to this is how long would something like this take, right? Let's say I'm a
mm,
company and I want some automation for my analytics process. And I know this is probably going to range like crazy different depending
yeah.
on the maturity of the industry or the company. But on average, how long would it take to automate that process?
So when we talk about complete automation, if you're working, let's say in Excel or something else
Yeah.
right now, that you're in full control of pretty much everything, literally you can do this in the span of like days or weeks. And when I say weeks, like 1 or 2 weeks, right?
Mm.
When we talk about going beyond that, let's say you're working with SQL servers, maybe you got some Hadoop infrastructure and you're looking to say, hey, let's take that to the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Even pushing things over to Snowflake, just so you guys are aware, if you haven't tried it already, they have a trial which gives you $400 in free credits to try
Okay.
things out. So these things where I was talking about the marketplace, you could even try that for free.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's exciting about this is even that you can get your data in there. Obviously, hopefully you have a good network connection at home with your internet, but you can get that movement done within the span of hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we talk about creating a whole new process, I mean, again, that can be within the span of months. And when I'm saying that, it's literally, hey, we have all this infrastructure. It may be slightly broken. We may need to go through some big business exercises to identify rules, et cetera, that's in place. And then
Right.
also some of those pain points. And then we can elevate our game with our dashboards, et cetera. And of course, that incorporates like a couple user group attendance opportunities where you're getting some feedback on some stuff and kind of doing that. So.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we did have a question earlier in terms of Alteryx and if there was a free version available. So I guess you said $400 worth of credits that people can use.
Yeah, so that's for Snowflake.
Oh, Snowflake.
Alteryx,
Sorry. Okay.
yeah, for Alteryx, if you're a student, there's a free license.
Okay.
Um, there's the 14-day trial with Alteryx, and there's a couple
Mhm.
different ways that you can get a free license. If you have any questions on that, please feel free to message me on LinkedIn, and I can kind of connect you with those different resources.
Okay, perfect. Well, Andrew, it looks like we went slightly over time, but we have questions that continue to come in, and I wanted to let you know that you can go on LinkedIn and YouTube and kind of answer those questions directly if you'd like. But I think that's
Awesome.
probably going to be it for the questions, guys. I love the questions from the audience. I think it makes the session so much more engaging and fun. So I really appreciate everyone jumping in and asking those questions. And Andrew, I appreciate all your stories about the bees, the data, the analytics, the automation. You're full of full of knowledge, and thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kate, for having me on, and thank you everyone for attending.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you all online.